You've probably heard it before. Masturbation balances your hormones. It improves sleep, keeps your skin glowing, and helps you feel young again. And for many women, that's exactly how it feels at first. A harmless act of self-care. A way to reconnect with yourself, to release tension, to breathe a little deeper before sleep. But what if I told you that too much of this seemingly innocent habit could quietly sabotage the very hormones you're trying to protect? What if your body, instead of being soothed, was being slowly overstimulated, triggering stress hormones, draining your energy reserves, and numbing your sensitivity over time? You might not even notice the shift until one day your desire fades, your sleep becomes restless, and the mirror reflects a version of you that feels disconnected, not broken, just off. Like something inside you has gone quiet. That's the part no one talks about, because for women over 40, the hormonal landscape changes. What once balanced you might now overload you. The same release that once brought comfort can now disrupt your internal rhythm, especially when done out of habit stress or emotional void. And that disruption. It often begins with estrogen, the delicate hormone responsible for your softness, your radiance, your intimacy. I'm Dr. Eliza Hart. For over 15 years, I've walked alongside women who felt this shift. Women who came in saying, "I don't feel like myself anymore," without knowing why. And more often than not, we traced it back not to what they did wrong, but to what they didn't know. Masturbation isn't bad, but misunderstanding how it interacts with your hormones, especially at this stage of life, can lead to fatigue, hormone imbalances, and a fading connection to your feminine energy. So let me ask you, have you ever noticed your energy dipping, your sleep disrupted, or your desire slowly fading? Even though you're doing everything that's supposed to help. If that sounds familiar, leave a comment below and write, "That's me," because naming it is the first step to reclaiming it. And if you're ready to understand your body on a deeper level, I invite you to subscribe now. This channel is here to guide you, not just with facts, but with truth, compassion, and the tools every woman over 40 deserves to have. 1. How estrogen works after 40. Once a woman reaches her 40s, a subtle shift begins deep within her endocrine system. Estrogen, once abundant and quietly orchestrating everything from mood and memory to skin elasticity and intimacy, begins to taper. Not in a dramatic overnight collapse, but in a gradual, silent retreat. Month after month, cycle after cycle, the ovaries slow their rhythm and the body's access to this essential hormone narrows. Estrogen isn't just about fertility. It's your body's emotional compass, your skin's glow, the moisture in your eyes and intimate areas, the calm in your nervous system, and even the depth of your sleep. It affects how you recover from stress, how you respond to touch, and how your brain processes emotion. And when that hormonal foundation begins to wobble, the effects are often far-reaching, yet so subtle at first they're easy to dismiss as just aging. But it's not just time that depletes estrogen. What many women don't realize is that the endocrine system is exquisitely sensitive to external pressures, especially after 40. Chronic stress, irregular sleep, inflammatory foods, and even the way we process unresolved emotions can all create friction in the delicate hormone pathways. And when you add overstimulation from habits that activate the nervous system too frequently, like excessive self-pleasure, the balance can tip even faster. This is because the body doesn't treat all stimulation as good. To the brain, intense or frequent arousal, especially without rest or emotional grounding, can register as heightened activity, releasing cortisol, increasing adrenaline, and eventually exhausting the system. And under prolonged strain, the brain begins to prioritize stress hormone production over reproductive hormone support. Estrogen takes a back seat. The result: fatigue, dry skin, thinning hair, restless nights, and a growing sense of disconnection from the self. Understanding this isn't about fear, it's about awareness. When we see estrogen not as a hormone limited to fertility, but as a vital whole-body ally, we begin to treat our inner ecosystem with more reverence. And that includes knowing when stimulation nourishes us and when it begins to drain us. Because after 40, it's not just about keeping up, it's about tuning in. And your hormones are always whispering if you know how to listen. 2. How masturbation affects hormones. Now that we understand how estrogen begins to shift after 40, it's important to explore how certain behaviors, especially ones tied to stimulation, interact with that hormonal landscape. Masturbation, in its essence, is a natural and often healthy way for a woman to connect with her body. When done mindfully and in balance, it can release stress, elevate mood, and support a deeper sense of intimacy with oneself. But like anything that affects the nervous system and hormonal axis, frequency and context matter deeply. Each time a woman reaches climax, her brain releases a complex cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, the reward hormone that gives you that euphoric rush; oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, which fosters feelings of closeness and calm; and in some cases, adrenaline, which activates alertness and focus. These are not inherently harmful. In fact, they're part of why healthy sexual expression can be so beneficial. But the body doesn't operate in isolation. When this neurochemical surge happens too frequently, especially in the absence of emotional connection or relaxation, it can create unintended consequences, especially for women in perimenopause or menopause. Repeated stimulation without adequate rest can elevate cortisol levels over time. Cortisol, our primary stress hormone, has a direct and antagonistic relationship with estrogen. When cortisol is high, the brain shifts hormonal priorities, favoring survival over reproduction. That shift means fewer resources for estrogen production, leading to a cascade of symptoms: insomnia, irritability, vaginal dryness, and that deep, unshakable fatigue so many women chalk up to just getting older. And here's where it becomes especially important if you find yourself turning to masturbation as a nightly coping mechanism, perhaps to fall asleep, numb, emotional discomfort, or escape. The noise of the day, your body may begin to interpret that pattern not as self-care, but as overstimulation. The nervous system doesn't differentiate between a stressful event and intense self-induced arousal if they both end in cortisol elevation. This isn't about guilt or shame. It's about listening. Your body is wise, and it's always communicating. When hormonal rhythms start to falter, it often whispers first through changes in mood, sleep energy, and desire. Recognizing how even well-intentioned habits interact with your shifting biochemistry is not about restriction, it's about restoration. It's about finding a rhythm that supports your vitality, not depletes it. 3. How much is too much? When it comes to masturbation, especially in the context of women over 40, there's no universal number that applies to everyone. Each body is different, and so is each woman's emotional and hormonal landscape. However, when a habit shifts from being a source of connection to a form of dependency, it's often a sign that something deeper is asking for attention. The question isn't whether you masturbate, but why, how often, and how you feel afterward. For many women, self-pleasure becomes a way to cope with stress, anxiety, or loneliness. And while occasional use for comfort is normal and healthy, problems arise when it becomes the primary way to regulate emotional states or to fall asleep. If you find yourself needing to masturbate more than 3 or 4 times a week, particularly at night, just to relax enough to sleep, that may be your body's way of signaling it's out of balance. Especially if the act doesn't leave you feeling restored, but rather numb, tired, or disconnected. Another red flag is a shift in how you relate to your partner or to intimacy in general. If you begin to feel indifferent to touch, less interested in shared intimacy, or even irritated by the idea of connection, yet still turn to solo stimulation, this may indicate a form of desensitization. Over time, the dopamine receptors that respond to pleasure can become less sensitive, with overstimulation requiring more intensity or frequency to achieve the same effect, leaving you feeling less fulfilled and more emotionally flat. In addition, difficulty reaching climax naturally, especially in partnered settings, is a common sign of overstimulation fatigue. When the body becomes accustomed to a very specific rhythm or type of stimulation, it can struggle to respond to more organic, emotionally grounded touch. This isn't a flaw, it's a pattern. And patterns can be gently shifted once we bring them into the light. If any part of this feels familiar, if you've ever found yourself saying, "I just can't sleep unless I do it," or "I feel more disconnected afterward," then before, you're not alone. Leave a comment below and simply write, "I've felt that too." Not because there's shame in it, but because there's strength in naming what we've been taught to silence. When we speak it, we begin to reclaim it with honesty, compassion, and a deeper understanding of what our bodies truly need. 4. 5 signs. Your estrogen is being affected by excessive masturbation. If you've begun to question whether your body feels off lately, yet you can't quite identify why, it may be time to look beneath the surface, specifically at your hormonal patterns. After 40, estrogen becomes more vulnerable to disruption, and while many factors contribute to imbalance, one that often goes unnoticed is the overuse of stimulation through self-pleasure. Again, this isn't about morality, it's about physiology. When the body is overstimulated and underrested, your estrogen levels may begin to show signs of distress. The body always speaks, it's just a matter of learning to listen. The first sign often appears in your skin. Estrogen plays a key role in maintaining hydration, elasticity, and thickness of both the skin and mucous membranes. When estrogen dips, you may notice your skin becoming drier and thinner, especially around the breasts and vaginal area. These are not just aesthetic changes. They reflect a deeper depletion of hormonal support. The second indicator is a marked loss of genuine desire for your partner. You may still feel the need for release through solo stimulation, but the emotional and physical longing for shared intimacy starts to fade. This isn't about relationship issues, it's a biochemical shift. Estrogen supports receptivity, bonding, and sensitivity, and when it drops, the urge to connect naturally weakens. Third, your sleep may become irregular. Perhaps you fall asleep quickly after climaxing, but wake up in the early hours feeling drained, not refreshed. Over time, this cycle of interrupted, non-restorative sleep can contribute to chronic fatigue, mood swings, and lowered resilience, making it harder for your body to regulate all hormone systems, not just estrogen. Fourth, many women describe an odd emotional numbness after masturbating, a sensation of feeling hollow rather than satisfied. This is not failure, it's feedback. The act of pleasure without hormonal support can become more mechanical than meaningful, leaving a residue of disconnection instead of warmth. Lastly, your menstrual cycle may become irregular or stop altogether. While age plays a role, elevated cortisol from frequent stimulation can accelerate the transition into perimenopause. If you notice your periods shifting dramatically, it may be time to ask whether your habits are supporting your hormones or straining them. Your body isn't punishing you. It's trying to get your attention. And honoring these signs is the first step to bringing balance back to the system that once made you feel fully alive. 5. Masturbation under stress is even more harmful. Up until now, we've explored how overstimulation affects estrogen on a biological level. But there's another layer, one that many women quietly carry without realizing its deeper hormonal consequences. And that is the emotional state behind the habit. Because it's not just what you do, it's when and why you do it. And when masturbation becomes a response to stress, loneliness, or emotional suppression, the body receives a very different message. You see, your nervous system is exquisitely attuned to context. When you touch yourself in a space of peace, connection, and emotional openness, your body interprets the act as nourishing, releasing calming chemicals, promoting oxytocin, and gently regulating cortisol. But when the same act happens during emotional distress after a tense day, in moments of isolation, or as a way to numb unprocessed feelings, the effect is no longer soothing. It becomes stimulating in a way that mimics stress. Your body, already flooded with tension, releases even more cortisol, pushing your endocrine system further out of alignment. This can put immense pressure on the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, the delicate network that governs female hormones. Over time, this stress response loop begins to downregulate reproductive signals, leading to lowered estrogen-disrupted cycles and increased emotional fragility. You may find yourself feeling more irritable, more anxious, or even emotionally blunted without understanding why the very thing that once brought relief now leaves you feeling worse. In my years of practice, I've sat with countless women who whispered versions of the same confession. I don't even enjoy it anymore, but I don't know how else to cope. And that honesty is powerful because awareness opens the door to healing. When you begin to recognize the difference between self-soothing and self-numbing, you reclaim your agency. You learn to pause and ask, am I reaching for comfort or running from discomfort? This is not about eliminating self-pleasure. It's about restoring your relationship with it so it becomes an act of emotional alignment, not avoidance. Because your hormones respond not just to action, but to intention. And when the intention is rooted in compassion, your body listens and responds in kind. 6. Finding the right frequency and how your body tells you it needs a break. One of the most overlooked aspects of self-pleasure is not how often you do it, but how clearly your body speaks in the aftermath. The line between healthy intimacy and unconscious compulsion is subtle, and it begins with the why behind the act. When you reach for self-touch out of genuine connection, curiosity, or softness, the experience often leaves you feeling open, grounded, and energetically renewed. But when it becomes something you have to do just to feel regulated, calm, or able to sleep, that's when your body starts to shift from receptivity into resistance. Your body is remarkably intelligent, and it always communicates through sensations. If after touching yourself, you feel energized at peace and emotionally connected to yourself, chances are your system is in balance. But if you find yourself feeling heavy, numb, or slightly hollow, that's not guilt speaking, it's biology. The body is saying, I need rest. I need stillness. A healthy rhythm of self-pleasure varies by woman, but generally, anything done out of need rather than desire warrants a pause. If you notice that your urge to masturbate is strongest when you're anxious, overwhelmed, or emotionally distant, it's a sign that the habit is functioning as a coping mechanism, not a nourishing ritual. And that shift, when left unchecked, can disrupt your hormonal rhythm over time, especially in the perimenopausal years when estrogen is already fluctuating. One subtle but powerful indicator that your body needs a break is your sensitivity. If stimulation that once felt pleasurable now takes longer, feels duller, or requires more intensity to feel enough, this is your nervous system gently waving a red flag. Hormonal imbalance, particularly low estrogen, diminishes vaginal sensitivity and overall responsiveness, not as punishment, but as protection. The goal isn't to stop, but to recalibrate. Take time to notice, how does your body feel before, during, and after? Do you feel more alive or more exhausted? Do you feel closer to yourself or more distant? These questions aren't meant to provoke shame. They're here to restore awareness. Because when your body starts whispering for a pause, it's not asking you to give something up. It's inviting you to return to yourself in a more honest, nourishing way. And that return is where true balance begins. So what can you do if you've recognized yourself in these patterns? The answer isn't to stop everything immediately or to feel guilty for the coping strategies you've developed over time. Instead, think of this as an invitation to gently shift from unconscious habit to intentional nourishment. Your body doesn't need to be punished. It needs to be listened to. And sometimes the most healing thing you can do is simply pause, reflect, and reconnect with your own rhythm. In the first week, try taking just 2 consecutive days off from any kind of stimulation. During that space, introduce gentle touch without arousal, massage your hands, your breasts, or your abdomen. Sit quietly with your body and breathe deeply. Practices like hormone-focused meditation, gentle movement, or even placing a warm hand on your heart can begin to restore trust between your nervous system and your feminine energy. In week 2, Begin to reduce your frequency to just 1 or 2 times per week. But shift the focus. Move away from quick release and toward deep awareness. Let each moment of self-touch be about presence, not performance. Breathe with your body. Listen to it. Let it guide you. If emotion arises, grief, tenderness, even boredom, welcome it. This is your nervous system softening. It's a sign you're healing. By week 3 and beyond, start asking yourself before each encounter, am I doing this to honor my body or to escape something I haven't named? That simple question can unlock profound clarity. This isn't about rules. It's about restoring choice. Masturbation done with awareness can be a deeply regenerative act. But when it becomes a reflexive response to stress, it begins to pull from your reserves rather than replenish them. If you're ready to begin that shift, leave a comment below with "I'm listening to my body." That's your first commitment and your most powerful one. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to bring us back to something simple but profound. Your estrogen, your energy, your essence as a woman. These are not mechanical systems that just need tweaking. They're living, breathing reflections of how you're relating to yourself day in and day out. And like all relationships, they thrive on tenderness, not pressure. Estrogen flourishes in stability, in softness, in a life rhythm that honors more than just productivity or release. It responds to how you treat yourself, how you speak to your body, how you rest, how you connect, and yes, even how you touch. Masturbation, in its healthiest form, is not something to fear or avoid. But when it's done without care, without presence, or as a way to override your deeper needs, it can slowly unravel your hormonal harmony. Not because you're broken or doing something wrong, but because your body is asking for something more nourishing, something more whole. And so I want you to hear this deeply and clearly. You are not too much. You are not too emotional, too tired, too complicated, or too sensitive. You are a woman whose body has carried decades of responsibility, adaptation, and silence. And if you're feeling off, it doesn't mean you've failed. It means your body is finally asking to be heard. Tonight before sleep, I invite you to place your hand gently over your heart. Just for 2 minutes, breathe into that space and ask yourself, not from guilt, not from fear, what does my body truly need right now? You don't need to have the answer. You just need to ask. And that single moment of awareness can begin a new chapter. One where your rhythms are no longer something to fight against, but something to come home to. Because this isn't about restriction, it's about reclamation. And you are not late. You are right on time. This gentle returning is where it begins. If this message spoke to you, I invite you to subscribe and stay connected. We're building a space where women like you are seen, supported, and empowered. Thank you for being here, for listening with an open heart, and for choosing to care for yourself more deeply. Your journey matters, and it's only just beginning.